Good evening and welcome to this edition of DeFacto Review. We bring you a weekly edition of news that are currently shaping Mongolia. I am Aruna and with me is Mr. Gerald DeFacto. We are live on Facebook at VTelevision Mongolia. Please follow us on Twitter, #Gerald_DeFacto. Coming up on the program. Mongolian political parties held executive meetings ahead of parliament by-elections. The government decided to establish Tavan Tolgoi Railway company. Mongolia lost the arbitration case of Internet Mining Corporation to Standard Bank of South Africa again. In June of 2018, Member of Parliament Mr. Tavan Tolgoi officially resigned from his position. As a result, around 22,000 people in Hinti province are currently without a representation in the parliament. That is why Mongolia will be holding parliamentary by-elections on October 7th. 13 out of 28 political parties will be competing for this seat. Last week, two of the major Mongolian political parties, the Democratic Party and Mongolian People's Party, held executive meetings to nominate their candidates. They have not announced their nominations yet. The first question is, why is this by-election important?
This by-election is important in particular because, like any other by-elections, they provoke or they wake up the political parties who are sleeping in their lair. So now finally they come out, and there are, as you said, 28 political parties in Mongolia registered with Ministry of Justice. But out of this 28, 22 of them are kind of closed parties to the public. I'm saying it because recently the DeFacto Institute made this Mongolian Democratic Party's internal democracy index, in which we tried to communicate with all political parties. 22 of them refused to work together, cooperate with this institute, and 6 of them have been cooperating. So, out of this 13 political parties, 6 of them are here. 7 parties are going out from their lair. Now they want to be a part of the political life in the country. Interesting thing is, this one company was not permitted to go for this election to go. Why? According to the law, election law, provision 57, says that those political parties which have not submitted the political election financing within 45 days after the election hold, those parties will not be allowed to go to the next elections. So it happened to Mongolian Civic Will and Green Party is in these situations. But this statement of the General Election Committee of Mongolia provoked me to think that the rest of these 13 political parties looks like already submitted their reports. But unfortunately, these reports of last election financing of the political parties are not on the website of the General Election Commission. And now my question is to the head of the General Election Commission, why you are receiving those reports if you don't inform us, public, on your website? On your website, there is no whatsoever information about any financing of 2016 general elections and 2017 presidential elections.
So can it reveal the current approval rate of the Democratic and Mongolian People's Parties?
This by-election will reveal kind of the approval rate of the political parties. That's what is by-election about. But however, there is a great chance of not having that by-elections because there was a recently submission to the Mongolian Constitutional Court that this by-election announcing is not giving a time, 6-month time, for public officers to free themselves from their positions to run for elections. Thus, you don't give them a right to be voted. My question is, how about the voters? Those 22,000, as you said, who have no representative in the parliament. Concerning these two executive committee meetings, Democratic Party, they're called National Policy Committee, which has 410 members, and some 300 members were there, according to the one executive of the political party today. And at the last meeting, their executive committee, they have discussed about the rechanging the policy of the party to be discussed at their upcoming Congress. People's Party have also own problem. Unfortunately, this the member, ex-parliament member from People's Party from that district 42 in Hinti Amak was ousted because he had a rapid, according to this court case. And now a question comes whether this People's Party have moral right to have another candidate for this district. If the previous one has a rapid woman, where is the guarantee that this next one will not do it? So this is a talk among our people that it is a moral issue for this political party.
You have written numerous articles on the transparency of campaign financing of political parties. You have even published a study on the internal democracy of political parties. Transparency of campaign financing has always been an issue in Mongolia. What do you think of this case in this situation?
Well, this is particularly important in this case because now these political parties, again, have not been declaring at all for whatsoever about their political party financing to general public. Nothing to say even about general public, but to the members. I don't think the members of these two large political parties know where their money comes from and how they spend for. According to this use about this internal index of Mongolian political parties, we have studied the role, the internal democracy level index of the parties by 4 categories. One is participation, second competition, third transparency, fourth financing. So according to these 4 segments, Mongolian 6 political parties have on the average around 51 or so in scores, which says that it is a semi-democratic parties. Because we made this study in cooperation with the Israeli institute called Democracy, and according to their method, we made this Stasi survey, and Mongolia in particular, these Mongolian political parties have to do a lot to improve their financing transparent. So that's why this time again they're going to spend a lot of money, but we don't know how they will not certainly report how much money they will be spending, etc. Though there is a legal limit, and state budget now devoting some 288 million 2 weeks just for that district election, by-election.
And how expensive is this by-election overall?
Overall, yes, this it's going to be way more expensive because than the 288 million 2 weeks according to the last government decisions. Why? Because these political parties altogether will spend a hell of money. 13, 14 political parties will spend the money, campaign money, for this their own candidates.
Let's move to our second topic. The government aims to speed up the construction of a railway connecting the Tavan Tolgoi coal mine in South Gobi province to Mongolian border with China. The railway will be 267 kilometers long. On Wednesday last week, the government decided to establish Tavan Tolgoi Railway Company. The company will have 51% state ownership. The ownership of the remaining 49% is yet to be announced. the railway would save $20 to $25 per ton compared to the current costs of transportation by truck. The government already spent $278 million on the railway construction project. Additional $790 million invested in investment is needed to complete the project. The government plans to obtain a part of this sum from a pre-sale agreement of coal from Tavan Tolgoi. Since its transition to market economy, Mongolia has not had a good experience with state-owned companies. Is this the right decision to make Tavan Tolgoi Railway a state-owned company today?
This is another decision to continue the project. We know at least there were 3 major attempts to have railways in Mongolia on this distance from the major coal deposits, Tavan Tolgoi, to the border. And as just now you said, this is only 267 kilometers long distance. I remember the case 10 years ago where Mongolian Energy Resource made on feasibility study with the help of a German Deutsche Bahn company. And according to that feasibility study, which costed the company $1 million, $600 million to be spent for railway itself, construction of a single track railway. And then $100 million to be spent for wagons and the track, we call it locomotives. And altogether it was going to be $700 million for that railway, and they were going to make it within 2 years, but they didn't work because there was a shown big campaign that with this narrow gauge railway from China, Chinese army can come anytime to Mongolia, all these things, the propaganda, brainwashing, and the project was stopped. Can you imagine if it was done, say, by 2010, the last 8 years, we could have a more coal exported, in particular when the price was good. And one issue is that, second, feasibility, the price-wise. The second issue is this $278 million you just mentioned, the project, half of what they have done is probably very hard to be accepted by the newcomer, who is going to be the 49% of owner of the project with their own investment. They would come, they would say that I don't accept this work half done. This is the base of railway. It's kind of piled rocks and materials, earth. And they would not accept probably as value of $278 million. So, and plus it is very hard to have responsibility for fundamentals of the buildings which was abandoned 5 years. So, because it's a responsibility issue. Probably this project will be more expensive than even they think. The other thing is, as you said, this pre-sale coal agreement, right? That's probably the only positive things we hear in this decision of the government. Why? Because it's the buyer who can give a guarantee that we can use that investment for a certain purpose.
Mm-hmm. So what lessons could the government apply to prevent potential financial loss in this company?
Several things. Actually, it would be much better if it is done by private businesses, because it's very hard to manage risk of commodity cycles, prices, and only the private company can do that, or a very large company can do that. Usually, the investment banks, development banks like ADB, World Bank, these would be good sources because this infrastructure project is not paid immediately. It takes years, 10 years, if not more. But also cost-wise, you said about the loss. cost-wise, for example, ADB made a railway in Afghanistan almost on the same conditions, relatively plain land, it's open land, nobody owned anything there, and it costed 75-kilometer long railway costed $170 million, which says $2.26 million per kilometer. By the way, this Mongolia Energy Resource made calculation was $2.24 million per square kilometer, but what the government now suggesting is at least $4 million per kilometer length of the railway.
It's expensive.
It is relatively expensive, and the more time goes, it will be more expensive. So it's better to earlier start.
Mm-hmm. In general, how are large infrastructure projects like this one are financed?
Usually, as I said, through private businesses. Mm-hmm. It would be much better. For example, Australia mm-hmm. has no mining whatsoever, any deposit. Mm-hmm. Australian government has no railways. In particular, the railways connected, it's more freight lines with mines. It's a different type of railways than passenger railways. Mm-hmm. So it's much better to do by either private companies, or if the government is doing, again, as I said, much better to borrow from the development banks and institutions.
Mm-hmm. The government announced that it will study other companies to partner and to attract investors to this project. In your opinion, companies of which countries would be most suitable to study?
Well, we have no choice other than our south neighbor, because south neighbor is the buyer of every commodities we sell from Mongolia, except only a few things that goes to Japan or Korea, but they are relatively smaller amounts. Mm-hmm. So most probably it's going to be a Chinese company, and probably most probably it's going to be state-owned companies, because in China, large mining companies and large banks, everything is owned by state. So, and its good thing is if they guarantee of buying the products, whether even they don't buy or not, anyway we will account it as paid, because otherwise we cannot recover the large investment we're going to put. Plus, and the issue is, in order to put $1 billion or so into this project, the same amount of money is taken from the investment into our social needs, education, schools, salaries, the issue. So government should think twice to make decisions on that, and it is to be very responsible for any decisions they make, because they are diverting otherwise very needed scarce resources to a large investment project.
Mm-hmm. Let's discuss our third topic of the evening. In May 2016, the Mongolian state-owned Irnet Mining Corporation was sued for about $51 million by Standard Bank of South Africa. The interest of payment on the loan is reportedly $900 per day. Irnet Mining Corporation is the collateral for a loan agreement between Standard Bank and another Mongolian private company, Just Group. In July 2018, Mongolia appealed to the London Court of International Arbitration. Mongolian side lost the case and is expected to pay back $109 million plus legal fees to the plaintiff. Irnet Mining Corporation's former CEO, Mr. Ranzerug, was investigated, and Mr. Bathu, the president of Just Group, is in jail today. Have all the people behind this case been held responsible?
Unfortunately not, and it is not clear actually who is responsible for all these cases, because Mr. Bathu said that he faked the signature, signing off all the documents, but the Standard Bank says that we talk about $100 million, right? Standard Bank says no, it is not fake. It is actually true, original signatures of Irnet company who state-owned 51% by government, and the CEOs, and the legal advisors, everybody's signature is, according to Standard Bank, it is original. So now the issue is coming. I mean, who is really behind it? The Mongolian court system is working so badly that many high-ranking corruption cases are staying under investigation for years. And we don't know even now, up to now, many things. 2 prime ministers were arrested, and they are making more noises and political voices, I think. And it is, the Mongolian judicial system is really so incompetent that people are paying second time this arbitration cost. Remember, the first arbitration cost was against this Hung Resource company of Canada, the license of which were taken by that time Prime Minister Bayer and given to Russians. And we had to pay also as arbitration payment about $100 million, and at the end we paid some $70+ million. So now question is coming, why these people are doing this sort of criminal acts, and we ordinary taxpayers paying for that. And meanwhile, many people are benefiting, and plus now, Erdenet, all foreign assets outside of the country are now frozen. Erdenet cannot make any international transactions from now. In particular, the 4 large banks are helping to frozen these assets. And of course, one of them, Standard Bank, is owned 20% by Chinese Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, 20%. And this is one of the large banks in the world. And those, of course, these banks will make sure that Erdenet foreign transactions are not made. If Erdenet cannot sell goods and get money back, then it is very bad for Mongolian economy, in particular for the budget. So the people demand this court system, please make clear finally who is responsible. And then those guys get paid. Those guys should pay for this money that is coming most likely now from the Erdenet. That means from the budget. Otherwise, this Erdenet should pay as a budget revenue.
Let me just take a back step. You mentioned that a lot of people are benefiting from this case. Who are those people?
Well, let's put it this way. Erdenet case is very clear case where in Mongolia private parties are so much intervened, diffused, mixed with public companies. In particular, state-owned companies, like the Erdenet is the best case, and all the state-owned enterprises are actually owned not by state, but by political parties. Why? Because at any time when the new political party comes to power, they first of all replace the heads of the state-owned companies. Why? Because it will be easier for them to supply goods, whatever, at any cost, usually way higher than market cost. Anything supplied from all companies related or financing that political party. And then this mixing goes so deep that at the end, the state-owned company is giving collateral guarantee to a private company. If this private company cannot pay, we pay. That's the case in the Erdenet case. So everybody who is involved in this process should be properly investigated, and they should hold responsible for paying all this. Now it is about $100 million. And I talked to Parliament member Sanjay Mehtab, who announced that London arbitration case recently. Turned out he was giving this information on phone, but actually on July 10th in London, that arbitration court appeal happened, and they are now, Mongolia is to pay $98 million total, including this plaintiff's fee. And it's very unfortunate case when we pay money for this sort of arbitration losses, court losses, because This in particular, this arbitration, the legal fee cost will include the, I don't know, in this case, Standard Bank's executives' first-class flight money and the expensive hotels and expensive judge's money. Otherwise, these millions of dollars could go to the schools here, to hospitals where we don't have enough beds for people, not enough seats for students in schools. We have 3-shift schools all around the country. So, you know, the unfortunate thing is because this not making clear who is responsible, who will pay, all we ordinary people pay, including very poor people through their taxes, through their VAT taxes. And this case is happening already second time. We are not immune now to the third case. I don't know when in which arbitration case will come to us to pay this amount of hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's a time for our judicial system to be really doing their job correctly and on time, which they are not doing. And unfortunately, Mongolian two political parties are so corrupt. They made the whole system so corrupt that they keep each other holding for doing something wrong earlier. So as a result, there is no such as an opposition party in this regard, and all these mistakes, all the costs are paid at the end by ordinary Mongolians.
What are the lessons that investors or taxpayers can take away from this case?
Unfortunately, when we talk about large investment, they have to think about the risk. And this is the clear risk of state-owned companies of Mongolia can do whatever they want, not as a business, but as more political purpose, with a political purpose. And so much Mongolian policy and businesses and decision makers are got together that it's very hard to separate them anymore. And the judicial system cannot do it. And you can see that in the fight of anti-corruption agency, now president's wish or resolutions or demand to replace him with somebody else, which does not change actually the situation unless these political parties themselves are transparent. Their political, as we have talked, their financing budget are not clear, not transparent. Until that, we unfortunately few people benefit from all this, and the majority, all of us paying their costs, their taxes, and we are witnessing increasing inequality in the society, which makes more poverty, because the money supposed to go to poverty goes to these few people, corrupt people. So Mongolia has to do a lot to in particular in judicial system, to have a vibrant, dynamic, normal public governance.
You have mentioned that the money will be, this loan, debt will be paid by taxpayers. I want to delve deeper into that. Where will the government get money right now? And how long will it take to pay
if the net has to pay from on balance, then government is to compensate that, because otherwise they will have a loss, or through another channels they would not give to revenue that money. So at the end it means from the budget it is paid. But actually they must be paid by those people who have taken this money. And there are now clear names, but now it's up to judicial system to approve and to say and to enforce the decisions, get these people paid, not us paid.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Good evening.
We are very happy to see you tonight on our air. And this is a program, Independent English Review Analysis program, that we want to share and have your opinions. Please be with us next time, Wednesday this time. Thank you very much.